Good morning. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for department chairs who came this morning. You guys didn't have to, but we appreciate you being here, being part of this process. This is a preliminary budget, and I stress preliminary because that's what it is at this point. Until it actually gets to town meeting, it's preliminary. So it's a preliminary budget, and this is a working session, which means it's going to be not a presentation, even though it looks like one. It's a conversation that we would like to have. So let's not think of it as a presentation. Basically, this is how we're working today. There are going to be various leadership team members who will speak to slides. We would like to encourage school committee conversation as we go along. Okay, so feel free to jump in, and any of our individuals here who are present today can answer questions. And at the conclusion, we'll entertain any comments or questions from our audience as well. So that's how we're going to work it. This was a collective process, just to let you understand how this was developed. We first identified goals and priorities before we even began looking at numbers. And I think that's always important, that your goals and priorities should drive your budget decisions. And we also used a zero-based and programmatic approach, which is different from how you've done it here in the past. In the past, what typically has happened is you have taken a budget, you've added on 8%, and you have tried to then fit your goals into that budget. We did not do that. Okay, so we did not consider any financial constraints, even though the town had presented us with a forecast for FY14. We did not use that forecast when we built this budget. We built it based upon needs. So at the end, you're going to see a budget that exceeds the forecasted revenue. But that's the process we took. And there were conservative revenue projections included in it. I'm not going to read all of these, and these are again in the report that I sent you. They're also, we're going to be putting this online as well Monday, so the public can have it as well. But we basically are in a challenging position right now in that our 5-year plan, our 5-year district improvement plan is expiring. And so we will be developing over the next several months, developing a new plan for the next 5 years. And so what we had to do is we had to try to capture what might be our goals, likely be our goals going forward over the next 5 years. So that's kind of what we have here. And one of the goals was to attain and sustain level 1 status. We talked about that with school committee when we built our goals one Saturday morning. And so that remains one of our primary goals here as a district. Now, to attain and sustain level 1 status is not easy to do. That's not, there are very few school districts right now who are level 1, because in order to be level 1, all of your schools have to be level 1 schools. And currently in Scituate, we have 4 of our schools have level 1 status, 2 have level 2. The other problem with that is that because of the size of our schools, it's very easy for you to move in and out of level 1 and level 2, because it only takes a few students to push you either down or push you up. So this goal is difficult and it's challenging, but if you look at the action steps within this goal, those are the things we want to do. That's what we want to build. We want to build a strong RTI system, not just in our elementary schools, but across K-12. So that's a goal that we want to build over 5 years. We want to make sure, and you're going to hear this today as to why, our lowest class sizes are in grades K-3, because all the research says that that's where class size matters. You get to grade 4 to 12, class size does not matter as much. It's not that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as much. Now, any teacher will tell you 30 kids in a classroom and 20 kids in a classroom, there's a big difference between them in terms of instruction. But the research says there is no difference if you get into high school, no difference between 20 in a classroom and 32 in a classroom in student achievement. There is no difference. So class size does make a difference in K-3. And so that's why we want to make sure in this budget you're going to see an increase in elementary teachers in grades K-3, despite the fact that our overall enrollment numbers are going down. You're you're going to see an increase there because of trying to achieve the lowest class sizes in those grades. A lot of this, again, relates to RTI. It also relates to making sure that our special education staffing deployment is balanced across all schools. We're working on that now. We worked on it this year. We moved to teaching at Jenkins. But we need to continue to make sure that we have a balanced deployment of our special education staff. Second goal, I missed one here. I'll skip one. Anyways, continue the alignment to the curriculum to the Common Core and 21st century knowledge and skills. I think I used the Scituate experience.
You did.
I did. I must have clicked through it twice. The goal prior to this was make sure that we have a consistent Scituate experience in schools. And we've talked about that at length, about what that means. And regardless of what school you go to, that we should have a consistent experience across all schools and grades. You'll see that in here in this budget. We're also going to talk about a new way to transport our students in this budget, which we'll get to a little bit later, which will hope to encourage the Scituate experience. Continuing alignment of the curriculum to the Common Core and 21st century knowledge and skills is absolutely critical. We're in the process of doing this already. We've made some very good progress, thanks to our department chairs, in terms of aligning our curriculum, but we still have a lot of work to go. This is not something that you can do necessarily in a year or two. This has got to be a sustained 3 to 5 year effort to make sure we align our curriculum to the Common Core. Also, we want to make sure we build in 21st century knowledge and skills throughout our curriculum. We also want to make sure that we increase the access to our high-level courses for all students. And one of the things you're going to hear from the high school in the future is trying to increase access and enrollment in AP courses, for example. So that's an area, that's a particular goal. Increasing common planning time for all teachers, working in collaboration rather than isolation. The fourth goal is the technology goal. That's to continue to build the technology infrastructure, hardware, training, and the creation of 21st century digital teaching and learning environments. We have already invested heavily in technology in FY13, but we're going to continue to invest heavily in technology moving forward. We've built the infrastructure, now we have to get the tools in the hands of teachers and students, and that's the next step of this. We also have to make sure that our technology staffing is adequate so that the equipment just doesn't lie dormant. The problem is you can have 21st century digital classrooms, but if you don't have the training to go with it, if you don't have the support staff to go with it, it's going to sit dormant. It will not be used. So you have to be able to invest in technology staffing at the same time you're investing in technology hardware. And finally, the last goal is the ongoing professional development for teachers and support staff in order to remain current and best educational practices, deliver high-quality instruction to our students. No matter how good we are in Scituate, we are very good, we have to continuously get better. And the only way you get better is to continue to learn. And you continue to learn from everybody that works within your organization, from the superintendent on down, from every individual who works there on up. You have to make sure that you ensure professional development and training. We, for example, if you look at number 4, we're sending our principals and special education director to NISL right now. Okay, so they all go, once a month, is it? You guys going? About once a month? Twice a month sometimes. For a couple days together as a whole leadership team, and we're investing in their training because it's important. Because NISL, again, is its research-based leadership strategies that will have a direct impact on student achievement. So you're going to see here that there's a lot of training that's involved for our staff coming up over the next 5 years. We have to implement the new Massachusetts Educator Evaluation System, and that requires training for both evaluators and the evaluate teams. We have to train teams in effective use of data systems. If we want to have a RTI system here, that is a model, we have to train how to use the data. We have to have a data system to begin with. We have to train teachers in a consistent district-wide approach to RTI. We have RTI in our elementary schools right now, but we want to have a consistent approach to it. So as you can see here, again, there's a lot of training involved that goes along with these goals. And you can't you can't forget about the training piece. And one of the challenges with training is that you have to sustain it over time. You cannot do the drive-through model of training. You cannot say, okay, we trained you once, now go do it. You have to sustain it over time. So if we start training our data teams, for example, that's not a 1 day, a 2-day training. That's a 3-year training. That's a sustained training over a period of time. So when you build a budget, you have to make sure that you can commit to sustaining this over a long period of time. So those are the 5 goals that we set before us that would drive all of our budget decisions that you're going to see right now. All right, we're going to start with curriculum, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Crew, and she'll take us through what we're doing with Envision Map. You can stay there if you like, or I'll click our way if you like.
Thank you.
Ask questions, yeah.
Well, I'd like to begin with Envision Map. And on February 11th, Dr. Ekstrom and I will be presenting to you, along with some math specialists and teachers who have piloted the program, the overall and more detailed overview of the program itself. But given the amount of the expenditure, I think that it bears some discussion today in terms of what this purchase would entail and why we're considering a new map program purchase. This program purchase will cost us $137,160. It will include textbook materials K through 6, supplemental materials, online features, and initial training for all teachers who will be using this system K through 6. The big question is, why are we considering a programmatic change such as this? And Everyday Math, although a very good program, is not aligned with the Common Core. And we need our program to be aligned starting next year, beginning of the school year, because grades 3 through 8 will be taking the MCAS exam, and the frameworks have to be aligned with that examination. In addition, the following year, 14 and 15, we're looking at the students taking the PARCC examination for the very first time. So it's really important that we are aligned and that we begin to prepare for these 2 examinations that our students will be assessed.
Now, the plan is to use FY13 money. So this is technically not in the FY14 budget. So we wanted to vote, but it is a new program, and so we wanted to put it up here because it is a big change. And again, you're going to learn more about it on the 11th.
And I think too, because it requires so much technology, which is later in the budget.
Yeah, that's the other piece of this too. It is tied to technology. There is a technology piece that if we purchase this program, we're going to have to make sure that all of our elementary classrooms are up to speed with technology. So there is a connection where our technology purchases will go initially will be towards elementary versus secondary because of this.
Well, two statements or questions, just so the public ever watches this. They'll know, we did attempt to find supplements, didn't we, to Everyday Math that would work for Common Core, and they obviously failed this thing.
Well, one of the issues is the spiraling approach with Everyday Math, and the timeline of when students are introduced to certain concepts is very different. So it's beyond just providing supplemental materials. The alignment does not match the new Common Core, and so it really does necessitate a change in our curricular alignment. And in addition, there are other features of this program. So in going out to look for what kind of program was aligned with the Common Core, Envision Math met that qualification. But there are also a number of other features that made Envision Math stand out among other programs. I can also tell you about that.
Yeah, we've actually touched on all of these,
Okay.
but here's the actual program itself.
So one of the things is that Envision Math uses effective math instruction. What does that mean? You may remember some of the earlier debates about skills versus having to know concepts. And really effective math instruction, we're going to ask you to think of it like a stool. really, we need to have that strong foundation of concepts. We need students to build their skills, but we also need them to have opportunities to try their hand at problem solving. So this is an effective math program that incorporates all of those elements, not just one or the other. It also incorporates some of the initiatives that we're already beginning in Scituate. At the secondary level, we have already begun to build on units using the backward design approach. This program also utilizes that design framework. It is embedded with differentiated instruction and RTI strategies. Each unit comes with ELL strategies, special education strategies, and even strategies for gifted students. So within this program, you have built-in recommendations for teachers to help them to differentiate and also to plan interventions for students who may be struggling on a particular concept or skill. It also has a digital system which will help teachers in real time help to diagnose what Tier 1 issues may be occurring during the lesson. At the end of the unit, you'll be able to determine what Tier 2 interventions may be necessary. And then finally, Tier 3, more intensive programming provided for children who are really struggling with difficult concepts to work in small group instruction.
So it's got a UBD component, an RTI component built in, the digital component again. So, and it is aligned with Common Core. So it is really something, again, we should be moving towards. We have piloted in Hathaway, I believe.
In first grade, in fifth and sixth, if you want to come see it before the 11th or after the 11th, to see a lesson.
It also incorporates, we've heard a lot about hands-on activities that sometimes promotes engagement. But beyond that, we're really talking about minds-on activities. Because you can have a hands-on activity that keeps students busy, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's activating their fullest potential cognitively. So we're really talking about minds-on activities that also happen to be hands-on. Different methods to solve math. It promotes communication with parents regarding math lessons and expectations. It also has a visual learning and animation component that not only helps students to visualize these concepts and how to apply and solve problems, but this is also available to parents because this is an online component that is accessible to both student and parent.
One of the things we talked about doing, and we can talk more about that on the 11th, possibility of implementing this over a series of years, not all at once. Originally, I think we were looking at a K-3 rollout, but it seems to make sense to us now with the price that we're getting, $137,000 for a new program. I think it just seems to make sense to do it all now versus try to piecemeal it in over a period of time. So I think this is the best way to go. And like I said, the plan is to use FY13 money. As Jill wasn't part of the development of this budget, curriculum budget, for FY13. Obviously, this was done prior to us arriving. And looking at where we were going to spend the money, we thought this was a better way to spend FY13 money than what was originally planned. Also, this would enable us to get the program now, train now before teachers leave for the summer, and allow them to be able to leave with the materials they want to look at them over the summer. Not that everybody would. There are those who will.
John, knowing that we use 13 money, is there any budgetary effect in 14?
Well, what happens in 14, there are some consumables that will be there in 14 and beyond.
But I mean, is there any, will all the training be accomplished this year?
Well, that's, initial training will be accomplished. But in order, again, we're talking about sustained professional development and to provide supports. What the teachers may need in the following months as they begin to use this program will begin to reveal itself, and we would also like to continue to support them in this new program. So it would be my recommendation that as we begin to, as this process begins to unfold and we discover the strengths and weaknesses of our initial training, we provide those teachers with additional supports as necessary.
One of the things I found, like when everyday math was implemented in districts, that's what Scituate has right now, typically what occurred, similar to this, is we did training, districts did training, and then they forgot about it. And I remember when I went to Freetown Lakeville, and I looked back at when they implemented everyday math there, they trained it, and then there was no training after that. And I looked at the number of elementary teachers that had been replaced during that period of time. Half of the teachers had not gone through training. So one of the problems is, as you bring new teachers on board, you got to assume that they're not necessarily going to know how to instruct with this program the way we need them to. So that's again, part of the challenge that we have is sustaining training over a period of time. So regardless of what you do, you should train. And I would probably guess that many of our math teachers right now did not go through any training with everyday math. Chances are, some of your elementary teachers probably have not had training. So you got to sustain it. That's part of the challenge. You can't just bring people in and expect them to know how to do it automatically.
And knowing that we have to curriculum that's designed that, I mean, would it be everybody's opinion, at this point, that this is a better product than everyday math?
And I think, Mary Ann, you've been in your school, so
Yes.
you can speak
Yeah,
to it.
I think one of the big advantages that you see is it's got the, first it's got the video component, which really engages the students, and then it has the reteach, and so as they're working, instead of their workbook, they have a brochure, and it's in color, and the children work in that, and then the teacher goes around, she's able to assess who needs the reteach, right away brings those kids over to the rug, does a reteach part of that lesson, which is all prepared, and then there's a practice, and then there's an enrichment for the other students who she's doing to teach. So it gets that tier one right away of, not waiting until the next day correcting the papers. She's able to very quickly assess it, and then the students take home, their homework is one part of that brochure for them to then extend and practice. So it really has some good components. But it is a learning curve. In September, they were saying to me, this is all-day math, just like they said that for every day, it's all-day math. But once, again, that big professional development, we got some people in to work with them. And there are a lot of districts on the South Shore, so we've been able to talk to other teachers who are using it. There are a lot of districts that are either piloting it or have already, Norwell just adopted it. And Pearson uses a lot of that online teacher components that, and the parents have access to it. So it's gone well.
But keep in mind, there is a technology piece to this too, that to fully implement the program, you need the technology in your classrooms. So, there's another cost to this besides the actual math program.
Is that in here?
That is in our $150,000 capital request, so, yes.
So, I hear four color, and I know that's something.
No, we don't photocopy this.
Oh.
It's the workbook comes
Yeah.
as a packet of,
Oh, and you
looks like your old
read
weekly reading.
Yeah. Okay.
Instead of workbook. So there's a packet the teacher undoes for every day versus turn to that page.
So does that get expensive then?
The recost is about the same as two everyday math journals, about $19 a student.
Yeah. I mean, we would have to build it in. What you see here, the $137,000 is the initial cost. That's just starting. Then then we have to build in what we call consumables and things that are used by the students over time. We build those into individual school budgets.
Yeah, the
I'm not-
reteach
the program
and
sounds great, so I'm not trying to
Yeah.
propose it at all.
the reteach and the enrichment is photocopied.
Yeah.
It's just what was your journal is now your brochure.
I know it's a passive.
Yes. John Ekstrom will be here on the 11th. Some of the math teachers, I believe, who are using it are coming, so we'll have an opportunity to ask additional questions at that time. Moving Jill on to professional development. Any other questions on that?
No, I was just thinking, I agree. I was just thinking, it's like that great deal on a printer. And then the ink costs
Yeah.
tons of money, you know what I mean?
That's how we're getting rid of printers.
Just nervous about the continuing cost.
Yeah.
That's for another day.
John, to the technology.
Yeah.
But go ahead, you got it?
Yeah, the technology is built into the capital, so what we have a capital request of $150,000. Within that, basically, and again, that's what I said earlier, our first focus will be to make sure that all of the elementary classrooms have projectors. Most do, but not all do. So we're going to be looking at making sure they all have something like this. We're actually looking at a new model that is an interactive projector, which basically functions as a smart board and a projector at the same time. So you don't need both. So we'll demo that for you at a future meeting, but it's pretty cool. So, yeah, it is.
Document readers, there's that.
We have, yeah, we have document readers.
Document
Yeah,
Those are awesome.
yeah, I know. Yeah, well, again, and you can actually, one of the things that can happen with the document reader is just that you can actually, if you're sick at home, a child can go on the computer and actually watch the lesson, unfold. So it's pretty interesting. I suppose parents could, parents could too.
Our data team training will consist of not only training in the new software that will assist data collection and analysis, but help us to provide a more consistent and comprehensive approach to RTI throughout the district, and examine levels of intervention and ultimately lead to more differentiation of instruction within classroom settings. The evaluation training, we have spoken before about the need to train both evaluators and those faculty and staff who will be evaluated under the new system. So this is part of the budget. As mentioned before, we have sent our principals and our special education director to a research-based leadership course, which is high quality and intense.
Well, Jill and I have been through it, so we can speak to it.
We have two items here, new teacher training and mentor training. We're looking to create a more comprehensive mentor program that would allow us to provide a minimum of a 2-day orientation program at the center for our new teachers, but a 2-year program that looks to provide our new teachers with training within their first 2 years, a qualified mentor who will be trained according to state regulations in how to assist new teachers, and also to welcome them and sustain our teachers here in Scituate. Cultural proficiency training. This fits in with our district quest to define what it means to be culturally proficient. Also under the new teacher evaluation system, there is an indicator where we need to find ways to create and maintain an environment that respects the diverse backgrounds, strengths, and challenges that our students face. And so we're going to be working on defining what that means and what that looks like in Scituate. So we're going to need some training in this area. We also, based upon the Walker recommendation, we are looking towards providing co-teaching training. And finally, AP training is also included. As you know, we recommended this year for our increases in the number of students taking AP courses and the offerings of AP courses. But in order to continue to grow and continue to offer AP, we need to make sure that our teachers who teach these courses receive AP training. So that's what that number is there. That will allow us to provide some teachers to. Yes.
I mean, one of the things, we do a lot of things well in Scituate. One of the things that we're probably a little weak on right now is our new teacher training and mentoring. Our mentoring program needs a lot of help. And so Jill is working with a group to right now to redesign that mentoring program. And that, that's going to include, so the new teacher training, is basically a commitment to basically train new teachers, using the skillful teacher method from RBT that some of you may be familiar with, but also training our mentors. We're going to be working with those new teachers over a period of 2 years. You're required to do a 2-year mentoring program by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Ours right now, again, if you were to look at it and do a program evaluation of that, it would come out to, because it's a little weak right now. Not there, but also as part of this budget, is mentor stipends, because we're going to have to pay the mentors to work with the teachers. And that's something that'll have to be bargained with the STA as to what the stipend would be. That's not here, but we also have a placeholder amount in the budget for mentor stipend, 20,000 or so. I think it was 20,000. Okay, that's not there. It's not technically training.
So curriculum material district-wide. The student data system, as you may recall, is the Baseline Edge Long Leads program that will help us in our data team training, storing and analyzing data. The talent management system, also through Long Lead, and works with the student data system as well, and also can interact with our Aspen system, will be for our new evaluation system, where we can provide teachers with feedback in ways that are secured and protected, but also allow us to provide more and regular feedback through the use of this software. Tablets for evaluators, one of the ways that we're going to be able to keep up with the demands of this new evaluation system is to provide our evaluators with a tablet that they can bring into classrooms, and they can begin creating the notations and documentation that's going to be necessary under this new system. And with the tablet, they can not only take pictures of artifacts of practice, as can the teachers, if they want that to be part of their records of evidence in terms of meeting certain indicators and standards, but it could also be used to send off immediately after, even just a brief visit, not an entire class visit, to send some notes regarding that visit about strengths or what really stood out in that classroom visit. The next 5 items really speak to our efforts to try to make sure that there is a consistency in the interventions and the programs that are offered across our elementary schools. And we noticed inconsistencies this year, and so we made efforts to speak with the building principals to find out what was necessary for their assessment needs and programming needs. Our list included Fast Math, Study Island, Devil's Next, Grade, and Accelerated Reader, which is being piloted this year at Wampatuck, but it's in there. Accelerated Reader is a research-based program in terms of monitoring student progress in terms of reading comprehension. So it helps through an incentive-type programs to monitor student reading level and also their comprehension. But this is not a fluency or phonics program. This is a reading comprehension program, which is different from some of the other assessments that we use. The students can choose from a wide array of books depending upon their level or ability. So our students who are at a higher reading level can select books that appeal to them and challenge them. And our other students can select books and still meet with success or push themselves in areas to help develop their reading comprehension.
Those first 2 items on there, the data system and talent management system, and I like the term talent management, it's kind of instead of staff. It's kind of nice. But anyways, they interact with one another. So the student data system is a way for us to track our student assessment data. And you can put MCAS data in there as well, which is one of the most attractive pieces of this particular program by Longlead. Talent management system interacts with it. There's going to come a time when the teacher evaluation system is going to include assessment data, student assessment data. These two interact with one another, from the same company, Longlead, basically enabling the evaluator and the teacher to be able to look at the data, the student assessment data, as part of the evaluation process. So we'll basically link the teachers that the students that the teacher is working with the data and with the evaluation system. So it's actually kind of a very neat system. And again, we'll show you that in the future as well.
I'm sure you're planning on this, but are you going to make a presentation to explain to us how that new teacher evaluation system
Yes, I mean, right now, what we're in the process of doing is we are evaluating the model, we're negotiating the model with the STA. We're getting very close to that. So, we're getting to the point now where we, hopefully within the next month or so, we'll have an agreement. Once we have that, at some future meeting, we'll basically roll that out to you, key components of it, what it looks like.
Because, when we went through, it was just saying about the, what you call them, points of
Indicators?
indicators.
Yeah.
Curious.
There's lots of them. I think, well, you saw the superintendent one because you have to evaluate me. You took all the indicators.
You'd like to take a look at the
There are lots of indicators.
I can take it with me everywhere.
Choose from column A.
Well, you're making a good point because, for a teacher to be proficient, there's no way you can meet all of those indicators. There's just no way. But, you have to look at the indicators, in total and say, okay, with this particular standard, those are the indicators that go with that standard. Is the teacher meeting that standard to be proficient? So that's the challenge. It's you can't meet all of those. Same way with the superintendent. If you look at there was 52 indicators or something on it, and it's impossible for me to meet all of those indicators. But if I meet enough of them, I might be proficient in that standard. So that's what you need to think of. Finally, one more piece for Dr. Drew.
I'd like to note that not all of the departments are listed here, and that does not mean that they have been forgotten. It means that these items represent new initiatives that need to be in the curriculum instruction budget. What you will find is that the departments have sent their consumables, their yearly consumables, the things that they order regularly, need to replace on a regular basis, to the building principals. So those types of items will be found in the building budgets. Even replacement of old textbooks or increase in class size, because they're not new initiatives, they will appear in the building budgets, not in the curriculum budgets. So these numbers represent, now I'll try to give you an idea, primarily textbooks. In English language arts, we're talking about the addition of a new AP language course at the junior level. For guidance, we're primarily talking about guidance curriculum materials, but also 2 ACT assessments. One for grade 9 called Explore, and one for grade 8 called Engage. And Explore not only has elements of this guidance curriculum and strengths and weaknesses along the Common Core subject areas, but Engage at the middle school level will help us to provide some predictors about student success and likelihood of graduation at an early age, so that we can begin to provide guidance-type interventions to help more of our students achieve success in high school and beyond. Math is a number of new textbooks. Also, each of those textbooks has been presented as a way to align our courses with the Common Core. In particular, there is a Math 7 textbook, an Algebra 2 textbook, an Algebra 1 textbook, a Geometry textbook. All of these are being requested in order to help us align with the Common Core. And again, we're looking at the PARC exam as early, scheduled for, I should say, 2014-2015. Also included in this math request is an AP Stats textbook due to the revised AP Stats curriculum. So that also is included in that number under math. In science, we have a new course in grade 7, Earth History, and so this number is the textbook as well as the resource books. In history and social sciences, we have a new course offering in the sense that AP US History is scheduled to become 2 courses instead of 1. So students take half the course in grade 10 and half the course in grade 11. And because now we're going to have 2 sections of at least 2 sections of AP going on. We're going to need textbooks for this new edition. It's going to become a 2-year offering instead of a 1-year offering.
Are we gonna have an explanation as to why they decided to do that?
Yes, Rob?
Want now, or do you want to wait till?
No, I mean,
February
but you
11th?
can talk to what's gonna come.
The big picture is, this may take a couple seconds. So the big picture is our job in high school is to prepare the kids for college, career, and life. So we met with the department chairs, we talked with John and Jill about our ultimate vision. So our vision is where we want students to be down the line. So we then look at what our offerings are at the high school to get kids to that level. So 90% of our kids go off to post-secondary, to go 4-year colleges. So one of our obligations, we hope to say, is we want to expose them to at least one AP course before they leave the high school. So talking with some of the department social studies, we looked at the model that's also shared by Duxbury and other school systems. We take that AP US history, we break it up over 2 years. So they start the program, in essence, they kind of do it already. With our honors course at the sophomore level, it's pretty much what we call right now a 3-year AP. So we're really just changing the title of it to AP. So the honors goes to the AP section. Now, I'm talking with Steve Scituate, our department chair, it doesn't preclude kids who are in CP their sophomore year to go into that second part of it, their junior year. So they're not so tracked that they're only, they have to do it their sophomore and their senior year and their junior year. It's aligned close enough with what's going on in the CP courses that they can move in and out. Because that's important. We don't want to have people just on this type of class. We want to have flow in and out of those type of courses. So that's the vision we have for the future, and that's the vision that's going to put forward to this recommendation of the AP system.
And you, on the 11th, we're going to have a presentation of the high school program study for you, and that's going to be discussed in a little more detail. Department chairs will be here for that. So Steve Scituate will be here to talk about the 2-year AP program in grade 10.
The only reason why I'm asking that, because it just seems almost redundant in a way. And the reason why I'm saying is that I'm pretty sure that if you check the statistics, many of the kids who took that 1-year AP class did very well on things like the AP tests. So to commit 2 years to it
Right.
seems almost a waste,
Yeah.
in a sense.
Well,
And also that if you remove that honors class, and now just made it a CP or an AP class, that middle of the road kid who may want to challenge, but for whatever reason may not want to step all the way up to the AP level.
right.
When we looked at that,
Yeah.
I think Ryan would probably like to say something as well, but we're looking at the differences between our honors and our AP work that students do. And we're finding there is that big a gap. So we're asking the kids at some point in time to take that more rigorous class and we're going to offer it to them. But in the CP course, we have to understand it's college preparatory. It really is a rigorous course in and of itself that's preparing the kids to walk to college. So we found that the gap between honors and AP isn't that much. So we want the kids to benefit from exposure to AP, but also understanding that the kids can flow in and out of it. So it's pretty much small for you right now. The honors is preparing them for AP that next year. I'm not sure if Ryan wants to say something.
I was just going to add that the AP, the College Board has revised the curriculum for AP US History too, nationally. So the change may reflect the curriculum change for AP US History. Biology changed as well. And I don't know if in hearing about stats, maybe that's what the need for the new textbook there is, but there are national changes in terms of curriculum, so I think that might be reflected in the spread of over 2 years, but Steve can answer that probably more directly, but I believe there's a large curriculum change too.
And can I ask you, Brian, as far as that AP language, are you still offering it to seniors too, or is that going to just slide down? Seniors, or is that just going to slide down?
There'll be a transition period where it's offered both to seniors and juniors.
Because I know a lot of schools do offer that to juniors.
Right, a lot of schools do.
So that's why we want to stretch it and be running it for 2 years.
Correct, during the transition.
John, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Because I'm struggling here.
Yeah.
The PowerPoint and encryption material
Yes.
are apples and oranges. Is that right? Because I'm having trouble finding this stuff in the print material. I mean, I'm assuming it's all there in a different
It's in there.
manner.
Yeah. This
But
is.
I should close my big encryption materials over the
Yeah.
PowerPoint?
Yeah, I mean, you can, but that is in there, because I actually cut and pasted this slide from right from the printed material. So it is there, but, yeah. It may just be blended in a little bit and hard to see. All right, so from this point, I'm just going to jump in a little bit and kind of get a picture of what's happening with staffing in this budget overall. This is what we're looking for, and again, Mike, this would be hard to pull out from the report as well. It's in different places, so I put it all together so you can see it. There's quite a bit of new staffing that we're looking for. 3 elementary teachers, and again, that's to lower class size at the K-3 level. However, this comes with a dilemma a little bit, and I'm going to ask Jen to explain that. We have, of these 3 teachers, 2 of them would be going to Jenkins, and 1 of them would be going to Cushing. Problem with Jenkins is,
We don't have those.
That was my first question.
Shocker. So when we came up, we talked about small class sizes being the most important thing for elementary school. And being really ambitious, I asked for 3, not knowing where I'd put them. But, so it ended up that we're allotted 2 at this point. One of them, I know where they can go, where the teacher can go. The other one, John and I talked about being creative, and I'm not sure what that's going to look like. A couple of the different ideas was the music class, but the music room, because some schools don't have a music room in the district. So maybe finding an alternative plan, but the music room isn't large enough. We thought about maybe sort of putting a room in the library where the computer lab is, expanding that a little bit. Not sure if that would work, so this is an ongoing conversation. But at this point, we have some.
So one of the things downstairs, not saying for the classroom, yet we're moving something else down there. For the cafeteria. Down there.
Storage.
storage.
And it's really, contemporary thinking is
It used to
really
be actually the grocery stores, I remember when we went. And there were, I think, special ed programs down there, or one-on-ones or something, for I mean, it was actually a functioning room for some education work.
right, but contemporary thinking is lost. Really. You can't put students, especially special education students, you can't put them somewhere off the side. So that's
No,
where
I
the
wasn't
reason it's
suggesting
changed.
repurposing it for that use, but I don't know, maybe computers or something else
Yeah.
can go there, and then you have space that,
So one of the things I'd like to tell you is that the reading specialist converted a closet, a supply closet, to a room where they could work with students, like tier 3 students. So that's just sort of kind of our challenge.
Yeah, this is a collective we problem here, because this is not just, we can identify best practice and say we should have low class size in elementary schools, which drive our decisions. But we get a we problem here, because Jenkins has a space issue. They have an enrollment issue and a space issue. That years from now will be settled when, hopefully a 6th grade moves into a middle school. But right now, for the next 3-4 years, that's not going to be the case, and we've got an issue to resolve there. So the question is going to be, do we keep class sizes higher than we know is in best interest of students? Or do we try to correct the class size problem first and then deal with what the fallout is afterwards? And I'll just put out there what some of the issues may be for you. Half-day kindergarten exists at Jenkins. There's one section of half-day K at Jenkins right now. What that means is that room, so valuable space, sits empty for half the day. Do we move half-day kindergarten out of Jenkins and combine it in another school that has room with another half-day K? That's going to be a discussion that needs to take place that, will raise some public questions about why is my child having to go to a school that's outside of my neighborhood and go to another school. So that's a question. The R word, redistricting. We start having that conversation now. Nobody wants to have that conversation. That's one that needs to begin.
I've been trying to have it for a few years now.
Well, I'm willing to have it. It's just, it's challenging because it involves potentially moving students. Now, I think there are ways you can do it that's not disruptive to families, but until we actually see all of our kindergarten students coming in and where they're coming from, the neighborhoods they're coming from, we really don't know. So we're trying to get that last 30 or so kindergarten students registered. So then we can see, okay, can we start shifting now? Because the best time to shift is kindergarten. If you're going to shift, rather than try to pull a student out of 3rd or 4th grade, better to try to shift them when they're entering the system than once they're in the system. So, but that R word needs that. We need to have that conversation because we got a problem here. And if the kindergarten stays there, the half-day K stays there, then you have no room. And those 2 teachers can't go. And your class sizes then would be?
So, first grade, they wouldn't be that bad, but in 2nd grade, they'd be 23.
23.
Which is big for a 2nd grade. 3rd grade, they'd be 24.
So you got 23, 24. Now, you're looking at that number and saying, well, that's not bad. Right, but again, if the goals are going to drive the budget, then our goal is to get them under 20. So, that's your dilemma. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
From the money point of view, knowing that we moved to English Jenkins, and
Yes.
and part of the cost or close with the budget is to restore that.
Yes.
EPC position. Has there been any discussion or about reducing the size of the EPC, meaning the number of people in the service, as a way to try and save money?
There hasn't been. That conversation hasn't taken place. Could it take place? Absolutely.
Yeah, I just throw it out there.
That's another, and again, that's not another one of those tough conversations when you're looking at this to say, do we increase the early childhood teaching? Now, with that teacher, we were looking at increasing the number of early childhood students. The goal was to get from, I think we're at 72 now, to get to potentially 80, but with a little bit of a different model that Diana can speak to in a few minutes. But we can go one way or the other on that too, right? But that's a potential one. The curriculum coordinators, and right now, in a little while, we're going to look at our leadership model in a little more detail. That is subject to collective bargaining. So anytime you see something that, whether it's change in working conditions, change in job description, those all have to be bargained. So we'll show you when they come up, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in general. Technology integration specialists, we already have a 0.5 right now in the system, so we're looking to increase the 0.5 to 2.0, so it's an additional 1.5. One would be 7 to 12, one would be K to 6. And again, these positions are critical if we expect teachers to begin to learn how to integrate technology into their curriculum and instruction. The paraprofessionals would be tech support people. That's all their job would be, to be tech support. So we'll probably divide them up across a couple of schools. All schools, we divide them up over. We just mentioned the early childhood teacher. The district facilities manager, this is a conversation that we've had before here. I will continue to reiterate the concern I have is that our business manager currently spends clearly 50% of his time, if not more, on facilities than he does on business managing a $30+ million budget. So, the reality of this is this position used to exist. It went away in budget reductions probably 3 years, 4 years ago or more. Yeah,
2008,
Right.
2009.
We've had conversations with the town over their town facilities manager perhaps helping us here. But he also is pretty much a department of one over there too. So we're trying to, with the town, build a department of facilities. And this would sort of be a person who would report both to Paul and to Kevin Kelly. And try to take some of the load of facilities maintenance off of the school district. And so that's what that position is. We also have a different model of ELL, so we're looking to increase the ELL teacher, decrease the ELL tutor. I'll show you that in a minute. We're trying to implement a nurse manager position. We used to have this. We lost it again in some reductions. We feel it's valuable. What this would require us to do is actually hire a .4 nurse and take one of our existing nurses and free part of her day up so that she can be the nurse manager. We're looking to increase some secretarial support. This would be the high school guidance secretary going from a 10-month to a full year position. In special education, the team chair secretary is 0.5 right now. We're actually trying to increase, we're increasing her this year just to get, because the work is overloading her. But keeping that going in the budget next year. And 3 part-time bus drivers to make our new bus system work. You see that. So those are the additional staffing needs. And there's quite a few there. There's a few reductions. Currently we have 3 social workers. We're looking to redeploy 2.5 of those social workers to adjustment counselors. But it'd be a 0.5 reduction. That 0.5 is a contracted service. It's not technically an employee of Scituate Public Schools. So you're not necessarily losing an employee. You're obviously losing somebody who works here through a contract. But that would be a reduction there. We're looking to reduce the visually impaired teacher. Currently it's a 0.8. Looking to bring it down to a 0.5. That's strictly based on the need that we have. That's a need-driven position. We would be reducing 0.6 high school teachers if we move some of the department chairs into a teaching role. Again, that's part of the leadership, curriculum leadership model we're going to talk about. Again, subject to collective bargaining. And finally, that ELL position, we have an ELL tutor right now. We're looking to increase, as I showed you on the last screen, the ELL teacher and cut the ELL tutor. So we would be going from 1.2 teaching to 1.2 teaching to 1.8 teaching and removing the tutor. Kate, I don't know, do you want to speak to that at all at this point?
I can,
Yeah.
if you have questions. What happened is we can't count the ELL tutors' hours with students. The state has a mandated number of hours that students require based on their proficiency in English. And at this point, they do not count the tutor hours towards that number of hours that the students require. So it is in the student's best interest and the district's best interest to increase the certified ELL teaching position.
And we currently have more of a pull-out model versus, and we're trying to move more towards a push-in model for ELL students. And the majority of our ELL students are at the elementary school level right now. And we can expect, by the way, that population to increase. That population is increasing in all school districts. So I think this is the right direction to move in, but it does require a reduction of that tutor position. Now that person, that's an individual, would bump into, theoretically, there's 2 things they could do. They could actually get licensed to teach ELL. They could actually move into an ELL position, teaching, or they could bump into another paraprofessional, which is what that is right now. But it is a reduction. Here's the proposed curriculum leadership model that we're looking at. I showed this to the department chairs yesterday for the first time. We have not bargained this yet, so this is all a proposal. But we've got some challenges, and our challenges lie in the fact that we have K-12 department chairs in this district. And despite their best efforts, it's difficult to spread yourself across 6 buildings when you're teaching classes at the high school, and they're all high school based. So what we're trying to do is propose a model here that would continue to use those chairs in a 7 to 12 component for some of them. Some of them would be in a K to 12 component. And introduce 2 K to 6 coordinators who would have no teaching responsibilities. One would be K to 6 literacy. One would be K to 6 science, technology, engineering, and math. They would be based in elementary schools, probably wherever we could fit them, but we would put them into 2 elementary schools, not the same one.
I'm gonna put it in Jackson.
Do you have another closet?
Jen's office.
Yeah.
I don't need help.
You have a mobile office. But anyways, so you can see basically, for the most part, the department chairs would become 0.4 teachers. That's where you saw the reduction at the high school in the 0.6, because ELA, math, and science is currently 0.2 teaching. Under this model, they increased to 0.4, and that requires a reduction at the high school of 0.6 FTE to be determined. Now the high school will have to figure that out where that 0.6 reduction comes. It's not really it's not a reduction in FTE at the high school, but it is a reduction to somebody's position at the high school. That might be 1.0 right now, could be 0.8. So that potentially could happen with this model. The big change, and the necessary change in all of this, is that they would have evaluation responsibilities. We cannot implement this new educator evaluation model without increasing the number of evaluators we have. Because right now, down below, see that 94.1 FTE for elementary? That 94.1 consists of 80 teachers, or 81 teachers, and 13.1 specialists, literacy or math specialists. That's what that 94.1 is. Right now, that 94.1 is evaluated by 4 people. That's impossible. So even if you keep the current model, you allow, and the chairs are evaluating, you're still going to have a hard time supporting evaluation of that 94.1 with quality. You can do it to get it done, but we don't want to have an evaluation system that we just do because we have to. We want to have an evaluation system that we do that with quality. If you're going to do it with quality, you have to have people to be able to do it. And so that's why that increase is there. It's an overall increase in dollars, it's an overall increase in FTE, but I think it's money well spent. And in our priority list, next to the elementary teachers, the 3 elementary teachers, this was the number 2 on the list. So it's up there.
Especially since the elementary teachers don't have vice principals.
There you go, and that's the problem.
Especially with Jen.
Yeah. Exactly. She's all by herself. She's got the largest staff. There is no way, and again, the new educator evaluation system, when you see it, it's a monster. It's good, but it's a monster. And it's going to take all of our efforts to implement this the way it needs to be done, the quality it needs to be done with. So, and we would have to train all of these people in conducting evaluations and continue ongoing training and iterator reliability, and it's a big endeavor here, but I think it's a necessary endeavor if we want to maintain that quality that we're shooting for. Okay. We also have a proposed student services model change. And this is going to start to transition into Diana in a few minutes into some of what we're looking at here. This is subject to impact bargaining because we're looking at changing people's positions. The number of school psychologists stay the same, but the disbursement will change slightly in that model. The social worker model, we're looking to transition that to a adjustment counselor model. So what you can see is a 3.0 reduction in social worker, but a 2.5 increase in adjustment counselors, net loss of 0.5 there. We're looking to increase high school guidance to 4.4. It's currently 4.0. So what would happen in this model is we have a 0.6 high school guidance counselor that theoretically would increase to 1.0. It's very difficult to do part-time guidance. There is no such thing. Guidance has to be real time when it's happening. You know, students don't pick their crisis around when the guidance counselor happens to be here. So really a part-time approach to guidance doesn't work. So that's what that is, that increase. The overall net change is 0.1 different, but it's a redeployment of how we use our staff. And this is a big change for us. Okay, so this is causing a little bit of angst. I'll give you a heads up on that. The student services positions, this basically explains, and again, this is in your report, but this explains what's happening. And Diana's going to speak to more of this, but we're looking to try to create a social emotional behavior program. That was part of a Walker Report recommendation. It's desperately needed in the district. The therapeutic school psychologists that we currently have would be split between high school Gates and the social emotional behavior program. Right now, the therapeutic counselor is based in the high school and primarily spends probably 90%, is that correct, Diana? About 90% of the time in the high school. It really was designed as a district position, but for whatever reason, it seems to have, you know, and a lot of it goes to where you're based sometimes,
Right.
because it's based here.
He has multiple, so much of his role is here at the high school. He does work with some students at the Gates School, and he has an out-of-district position. So he's really split among 3 positions also, but primarily both of his caseloads here at the high school.
So we would spread him out a little bit more. We already talked about the social worker position, what we're looking to do there. We currently have 2 social workers on staff and 2 who are 0.5 contracted services. The 2 social workers who are on staff are also licensed as adjustment counselors. So that's just an easy transition. It's one job description to another. And in fact, the job descriptions are almost identical for a social worker and school adjustment counselor. It's really minimal type of change. We would have to hire a 0.5 adjustment counselor for Gates, although Sarah, you see that as an advantage over what you currently have as a social worker. You might want to explain why.
So my social worker currently is a contracted service, and her salary is 0.5, and salary comes from a little bit from us, a little bit from Central Collaborative, and a little bit from Social Health. And she has to bill through insurance a certain number of hours in order to justify that position. The problem is she can only certain insurances will pay for her. So the students that we can refer to her is very limited, based on insurance. For instance, getting to Blue Cross Blue Shield, we can't refer to her. So it makes it very difficult for us to actually make up those hours, but we have this great need. So right now, our school psychologist is picking up a lot of that, but in this new model, the school psychologist isn't going to have that full time to do work with students necessarily. She'll be doing some, she'll be doing the teen care role as well. So if the social worker is our SPS staff school adjustment counselor, she can now see the students who we really need her to be seeing, because we won't have to worry about insurance. Be much more productive.
Right. So this is a big benefit. This change, not only is, I mean, it's not going to be a change much for the elementary schools because they already have these people in their schools as social workers right now. So it's just a change in job description. It is a benefit for Gates in this particular case. The loss is at the high school. The 0.5, if you're asking where the loss is, it's at the high school. But keep in mind, we're increasing guidance at the high school. So
And there already is a school adjustment counselor, is it correct?
yes, they already have a school
So-
adjustment counselor.
Yeah.
They're 1.0. So they will lose their social worker, that's at the high school, who is also contracted services. The biggest change probably in making all of this work is with the school psychologist. The school psychologist, and again, I'll let Diana speak more to this change, but basically what we're looking to do is have them take on the role of team chairs, one per building, versus the model that we currently do now, versus the recommendation of Walker. Walker recommended 3 individual team chairs, and we're moving this in a different direction. We'll talk a little bit more about that and the why. But what we're trying to do in this is we're trying to create, without adding staff, we're trying to create a position of .5 ECC coordinator / out-of-district team chair. And we're also trying to create a social emotional behavioral program. Right now targeted for elementary school, but Diana has a committee that she's put together that's examining that program, designing that program, and it could be located somewhere else. We have a need really across all schools right now. We can't implement it everywhere. We have to implement it somewhere, so that's the target. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we're increasing .6 high school guidance counselor to 1.0. Which brings us to Diana, and I'll just introduce this. When we looked at our special education budget, we looked first at trying to redeploy our resources. Why? Because we have right now adequate staffing for special education. Walker report found that. It said our staffing is fine. It's more of how we're using our staffing that may be the problem. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to redeploy resources first before adding to them. Secondly, we surveyed other districts to see what their model looks like. Again, I was coming from a district with a lot less school psychologists, but we weren't using school psychologists where I was like we're using them here. We wanted to maintain current staff. What we didn't want to do is we didn't want to lose jobs. We didn't want to lose people. We have high quality people, so we wanted to make sure we kept our people. But we needed to shift what they would do. And finally, we had the Walker report. And the Walker report had some recommendations in it, some of which we are following, not all of which we are following. Some we're kind of redesigning what they recommended into what will fit for our budget right now. If we follow their recommendations and added positions, you'd have like 4 or 5 new positions added on top of everything here. So there's the challenge. And here's Diane.
All right. So with all of that, also with my own observation of programs, talking to some people, looking at current IEP caseloads, service delivery grids, and the hours of services within each domain, district needs that have presented themselves, and also being in aligning with all of our goals, one being that consistency and the Scituate experience, looking for that consistency among all of our buildings and in the IEP process and how the children and families go through that process, pre-K, and many families to age 22 with their children, young adults. Trying to maintain that consistency and looking at how we can redeploy and look at faculty that we have, as John just said. So that's what's come to some of our decisions in our proposals that we're making today. What's new? Definitely, we talked about the social emotional behavior program. I know that was something that's been talked about quite often through my interview process, through the summer, through the Walker report, talking with the principals, what are our needs. So I do have a core committee that will be starting to meet next week, with Steve Howley, Marianne, Jen Arnold, Christine, one of our teachers, special ed teachers, and myself. We're going to start that discussion. That core committee may expand as we start talking about the development of this program and looking at our in-district needs along with our out-of-district needs.
Could you just real quickly explain what that program is?
Right. So for some of our students who are in the eligibility category of social emotionally impaired, there is a need for a sub-separate program, and partially sub-separate, because want inclusion to the fullest extent that students can actually be in an inclusive setting. But to assist them therapeutically, we rely heavily right now on our school psychologists to see some of these students in small groups or one-on-one. We also, many families are receiving services outside of the school system, and we have a responsibility to meeting those students' needs in their eligibility category and not solely in academics. And Scituate does a pretty good job of that right now. But to have a program where the students can have a home base, a place where there's a special education teacher and a school psychologist, therapeutic psychologist to be able to support them as they need that support and to run groupings with that class, that cohort of students, is more beneficial and something that we don't currently have.
So they spend part of their day in that setting.
They would, right, and to the mainstream academics and specials and where it's. So that's a cursory look at the model, but again, it's an initiating discussion.
One of the things you might be able to look for in the future with a program like this is the possibility that students who are currently outplaced
Right.
might be able to come back. You know, and be cautious with that at first because you got to build a program before you can bring them back. You got to make sure you have a functioning program that meets their needs before you bring them back. However, this is a program that may prevent students from going out. And you know what the cost is of special education for out of district? So these programs can really help keep kids in.
No, I have no problem, I just thought it would be a good idea.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, and that's a part of our discussion is to look at who are our current cohort and who are the students that we would look to toward in the future to bring back once the program has real solid ground in the district. We want parents to be confident, we want to be confident that this is a great program to bring students back into and not just pull them back as they pull them back. We are proposing an ECC, early childhood coordinator / out-of-district coordinator position. So one person responsible for both of those areas. And that would be a reallocation because we currently have 3 team chairs. They're not 3 FTEs because 2 of them also have teaching responsibilities in their buildings. So we would be reallocating those positions. One could potentially be filling this position.
And keep in mind too, I mentioned the Walker Report. This is different than the Walker Report
Right.
recommendation. The Walker Report recommendation called for 3 distinct team chairs. And right now we have 1 team chair and then parts of others, people who make up 2.8, I think, in total team chair. So they were calling for 3 distinct team chairs and a 1.0 full-time ECC coordinator. We just didn't feel that we could afford either one of those recommendations right now without adding to the budget. Okay, go ahead.
And then administrative assistant support for that role. So currently, we have that position supporting our team chairs who not only do our in-district IEP team chairing, but also have the out-of-district caseload. So that now, and seeing, as John had said before, we started with that position this year as a 0.5 FTE, and I requested that position be moved to a full-time FTE, and that's been passed through. People voted on that the other night. And she is working in that capacity and it is very much in the need. And so then with this, the out-of-district coordinator, we need to maintain that.
And we hope to see that continue in this budget.
Okay, now we have a proposal for a teacher certified with severe needs certification and BCBA degree. Currently, we contract 22 hours of a BCBA consultant, someone who comes to our district, works with families, works with teachers, oversees the monitoring of behavior programs, functional behavioral assessments, and data collection of discrete having this person on board as a full-time teacher and having that in the capacity of teacher will also expand the level of services that we have here. And being 1.0 versus 22 hours to the district will also be able to manage the caseloads that we're seeing increase as we're talking right now.
Right. And one of the things, we looked at other districts, we were actually below where some of the others were with BCBA. So this is an area that we had to increase. So.
Yeah, I'm getting emails all the time requesting more hours from her, and at 22, probably at 35 at this point. So we're working on that. Assistive technology specialist. So currently, we have Tara Switzer, who is our speech language therapist at .7 in Hathaway, and she primarily works with the ILC and PLC students and teachers as a speech language therapist. And she's working as a stipend position in this role now for 7 hours a month. So she comes in on Fridays when normally not be her day. And she is working with myself, with a consultant I have on board who will be doing professional development training with our faculty, and with the faculty and students who have assistive technology, and helping to consult to their programs for assistive technology. She's also going to be starting a very intensive program at Simmons in this area. And so I am proposing, instead of having 7 hours a month, I'm proposing it be 0.3 FTE, which would be more hours to the district to provide a need that we have in assistive technology. We have many students, as you know, who are here in the district because of the great programs we have, and they require assistive technology, communication devices to access the curriculum. And we need someone more consistent on staff to help support that program for those students, support the devices they use, and someone who's current and up to date to what is out there for these students. So that's a proposal. We talked about the 2.5 FTE school adjustment council. I think really John went through that very well. So unless there's other questions, I'm going to go over not really talk to that point. That. And we are also requesting 1.0 to return back to ECC of a special education teacher. And again, that would be a reallocated position from the 3 team chair positions that we are shifting from that role. Not necessarily the people, but just understanding that's where the FTE is coming from. It was mentioned here about looking at reducing FTE student numbers, possibly in ECC. So I have another committee, a lot of committees, and I can.
You have more committees than I do.
No, I do. So that is one of them, that have special ed teachers from ECC, related services from ECC, parents from ECC, both parents at the 3 and 4-year-old levels with and without students with IEPs on this committee to meet with me and talk about ECC as we move forward, and programming that we want to see for those students and how we want the day to look. That one of the recommendations from Walker was to look at this program and to say the 4-day model and the 3-year-olds at half day and the 4-year-olds at half day, these should be looked at, and are there other configurations that we can look at. It's also a revenue source. When we have, our students, non-IEP students, they pay a tuition, and we rely on that, and ultimately want to talk to that as to what those revenues pay for, but it certainly helps the district and the program. So reducing, all of this is on the table, but we haven't had that discussion yet. So we're all starting. That's where we're going with.
And also, there's a recommendation, as you know, to move early childhood physically out of the high school and into an elementary school. That you're not checking. That will not happen next year, but it is being looked at as possible for the following year. There will be a capital expense with that. You just can't, wherever you go, you just can't pick it up and move it there with no cost. There will be a cost to do that.
We have to retrofit bathrooms, basically.
Yeah, the bathrooms,
It's a
yeah,
huge
no, the big
expense.
one.
Part of it. Okay. So what is being reduced or eliminated? Point 3 FTE, as was mentioned before, of teachers visually impaired, which reduces from a point 8 position currently. And I'm talking with Jean Shea. I will be having further conversations. As we know, this is proposed position changes, and we'll be having further conversations this year to look at her caseload in more depth, along with the IEP services that are provided directly from Jean, because our teachers visually impaired, our student population who is in need of those services. But at this point, looking at IEP services and talking about potentially more of a consultative model, and along with direct services, 0.5, what's being proposed. We talked about the team chair positions, leaving that current model and shifting into the school psychologist and a building-based model. And building, I'll talk about school psychologists more.
You can talk about it right now.
So there are many benefits to having our team chairs be at the building-based model, with really knowing the students on a day-to-day basis, knowing the families, having that relationship. They, again, all of the roles will be in collective bargaining, but some vision of that role being running the initial IEP meeting and the reval meeting. As is currently the model with our team chairs, and our special ed liaisons already run their own annual meetings, the two that come between the reval and the initial. So we wouldn't change that. And in looking at the school psychologists and all what they do now, and the school adjustment counselors coming in, our RTI model that we're looking at, some of their current responsibilities would also be taken off of the table for them, like the data team, running those data teams and being responsible.
504 plans. Nope, sorry.
504, which is really a general education service, and school psychologists are special education. There's never a black and white split between the two departments. We work together, but there are mandated roles that each department does take. We want to make that a little more clear. And there are other pieces as we go through this budget cycle and talking about what would be the role of the school adjustment counselors, the school psychologists at the building level. It really gives more of a benefit to families.
As you know, I mentioned earlier, positions, some of the proposals creating a little bit of angst. This is probably one that's creating angst because it's a change. It's a change in what we've been doing. Our school psychologists, very valuable, and we've been asking them to do a lot more than really what they should be doing. But again, our elementary schools in particular that don't have counselors, that don't have assistant principals, the principal needs somebody there as a support. And these school psychologists have played that role there and have done more than what typically a school psychologist would do. So we're looking to shift the job a little bit. So, but again, with any kind of change, that creates some level of anxiety that we'll work ourselves through.
We talked about the contracted social work services. We currently have 1.0 contracted, and again, I think that was already really gone through. And we currently contract for some hours for Orton Gillingham services for students. And we also currently have many of our teachers certified to teach Orton Gillingham. So I spoke with this provider, and actually she was going to let us know that she had not intended to be back next year either. So we're going to rely on our teachers that we've invested money and time in training to be providing those services. And some do already provide those services. So.
Can you explain
Orton Gillingham, so Orton Gillingham is a phonics-based instruction for students with real significant learning disabilities, working on, I always want to say, breaking the code for reading, and decoding and fluency and comprehension. And so at buildings, again, you'll see each building listed out for current models of services, and the theme of consistency.
Pushing Hathaway. Keeping in mind that Hathaway has the ILC PLC, so that's why you see six special education teachers there, but technically 3 of the 6 are in the district-wide programs. They have a little more speech and language because of the need of the students, again, because of the ILC PLC, but everything else is pretty much the same. There's Jenkins.
And we're looking at is an increase in their special ed teacher population.
Right. Wampatuck is basically the same, again, the only thing different, really, some of the roles. There's Gates. Again, nothing really different there except for the roles. In the high school, right now is, there's a shift in special education teachers from 8 to 7, but that's, a lot of that's contingent upon really, where we end up putting people, so that may or may not occur.
Can I just ask a
Right.
question? I mean, I really want to commend you for trying to meet all our needs through appointing jobs, responsibilities. But are we creating some jobs that are really undoable? I mean, that psychologist taking on this other extras, other systems do that already?
They do, and as John had said earlier, I did ask like districts to give me information of how their FTEs are distributed among school psychologists, speech language therapists, social workers, and school adjustment counselors. And the roles that we're proposing match many of those districts, if not come very close. So we're not so far outside of what is happening around us. And how
I'd say we're outside now.
Yeah.
I'd say if you looked at the role of our school psychologists now, what they do now, compared to the survey we did, I think we would be the exception.
I'm just trying to see how the pieces fit together, because,
Yep.
for example, school psychologists 4 or 5 years ago took over the responsibilities of guidance counselors.
Yes.
Right,
So
right.
now I'm looking at them, I'm saying, okay, now they're a guidance counselor, they're a school psychologist, now they're a team chair.
Yes.
I'm saying, that's why I was wondering.
We're trying to take the guidance counselor piece
Away.
away
To the adjustment
to
counselor.
the
Right.
adjustment counselor.
Right. So again, when we start talking more heavily about job descriptions, that will become more clear as to what is now the proposed role and what has been their role. And by adding team chair, we're not just adding on. We want to really make sure that we're not just continuing to dump.
There are 3 of these things that are connected, that are very important. One dependent upon the other. The redeployment of team chair for the school psychologist, the change of social worker to adjustment counselor may seem just like a minor change, but the reality is that is going to be your guidance counselor in your elementary schools. The 3 that don't have one right now. And the K-6 curriculum coordinator is going to play another role, and they will lead those data teams. So all 3 of those are dependent upon one another. If one doesn't happen, the other 2 become, not like they can't happen, but it becomes challenging. So exactly what you said is, how do we remove things from people's roles? Is it a doable job? Is what we looked at. Let's make sure it's a doable job to be able to do the job right. And I would say right now, what we're asking our school psychologists to do, particularly at 3 of the elementary schools, is beyond what most roles of school psychologists would do. All right. Any other questions for Diana? I can move into what could be one of the most fascinating things. Everybody's into school start times. We're looking at changing our bus system. We currently have a 4-tiered system, meaning we go, pick up the high school gates and then up 2 elementaries and 2 other elementaries. We're looking at going to 3, and I'd love to go to 2. So keep in mind that this is hopefully a transition from 3 to 2, but I can't get to 2 without a huge problem. Paul and I have looked at it. But Paul, Donnie, and I have worked on this for a couple months now, probably a month and a half. And what we looked at is we looked at ridership rates over 3 years to get a trend on how many kids actually ride the bus. And we figured out how many buses we would need to make this system go. We currently have 13 buses in operation right now. Okay? We would need 16 to make a 3-tiered system work. Under this system, Gates and the high school would essentially go at the same time. They'd ride the same bus. So high school start time moves a little later. Gates start time moves a little earlier. Gates gets out a little earlier. High school gets out a little later. There's some change there. So that changes people's lives, both teachers and families. So that's got to be taken into consideration with any kind of change of this magnitude. The other tier 2 and tier 3, and whoever the early and whoever the late school is, don't pay any attention to that right now. But they don't change, unfortunately. I wish they could. We tried to do it in this model. We couldn't because we needed enough time to get the tier 1 kids home to get to the tier 2 kids. We tried to push it to, push the dismissal times up a little bit. We couldn't move it. That 3:20 dismissal time is late. Ideally, we'd have both of those schools on, or all 4 of the elementary schools on the same time. Now, there's some good reason for this, why we want to do this. And the reason for it is sharing staff and professional development after school. It's really hard to get all 4 of the elementary schools together because of that delayed time. Even on early release days, you have the perfect opportunity to bring everybody together. There's one school that's waiting for the other school to come, and then the other school leaves early. You know what I mean? It doesn't work. So we talked about a Scituate experience. We had an obstacle right here. This is an obstacle to the Scituate experience. So if we're going to build stronger collaboration time among all 4 elementary schools, eventually we're going to have to get them on the same clock. But right now, it's really difficult to do. Tier 1, by putting Gates and the high school on the same time, is, we looked at that 7 through 12 model, curriculum leadership model. Now, those 7 through 12 curriculum leaders, department heads could get all their teachers together for meetings at the same time if they needed to. You could potentially share staff if they had a similar schedule. They don't right now. And big problem for Gates is Gates does not meet time on learning. Gates is short. Sarah, you want to talk to that a bit?
So, we were talking in a meeting about, different opportunities for trying to get staff together, and one of the ideas made me think, I wonder if we can meet time on learning if we did that. So I started to really calculate, and what I discovered was that when the district went to 7 half-days, 7 early releases and 3 half-days, as opposed to 4 early releases and 2 half-days, we started to not make time for it because Gates was really, really close as it was. So if you look at this year, which is where I started, this year, we are actually short 8.4 hours. And if you look at the proposed calendar for next year, we will be short 5 hours. Because there's only 2.5 days, which is that 20 release time for us. So I got to John and said, we're not making time on learning, and realized that we needed to figure out how to solve that problem. Going to this time schedule helps us solve that problem because the high school was actually their day is actually 8 minutes longer than ours. So if you add in, and I think this actually ends up being 5 extra minutes, but 5 extra minutes times 180 days divided by 60 gives us enough hours to make time of learning, give us a little bit extra push as well. So it helps us solve that problem.
And it gives high school students 20 more minutes of sleep. Not a lot.
And it also, it will allow the high school and Gates to look at coming up with a more similar schedule so that eventually we can share staff because that, would have solved some problems this year. Yeah, like the high school needed a Latin teacher, I needed a Latin teacher, but they had to be 2 separate people because we have such different schedules.
Are there regulatory penalties or verifications to not meeting time and learning and getting there?
Yes, there can be, and what happens is, when you have your coordinated program review, part of that program review is you have to submit your time on learning requirements. My guess is, last time the program review was done here, we were meeting time on learning because we had less early release days. When the district went to more early release days, all of a sudden Gates fell below. So technically, as long as nobody from the Department of Education is watching this morning, I don't think they are, we are not meeting. It's our obligation, yours and mine, to make sure we do. So we have to do something. And this is something. It's a way. Not the only way. We could cut back on early release days. Now, that fits our professional development plan then becomes more challenging to do. Because that's when we do a lot of our professional development, is on those early release days. So you're compromising somewhere. Also mentioning that with any change in time, even though the school committee sets the calendar and sets the time, it still impact bargaining with the STA because it impacts their work day. So you still have to do that. But Jamie and I have already had the conversation that, this would be something we have to sit down to look at. And, certainly they may be very well interested in this as well as seeing this problem needs to be fixed one way or the other. We got to find a way to solve the Gates problem. But there are many other benefits to putting the high school and Gates on the same tier. Besides moving them later, again, and the possibility of sharing the same schedule eventually. They don't have it right now, but you can share it. Time on learning. Other things that are important. No drivers are going to lose hours. None of our bus drivers are going to have hours cut back. As a matter of fact, there'll be a little bit of increase for one of them. We will have to hire some part-time drivers, 3 of them, as I mentioned earlier. It paves the way for the eventual 2-tiered system that I hope comes maybe with the Gates Middle School being 6 to 8. And it also, and this is critical to making this all happen, we would have to move from a bus ownership model that we currently employ to a bus leasing model. And we would have to engage the town in that conversation. Because right now, we currently buy buses and own buses and fix buses, insure buses, and replace buses. We would look to go to something like Hingham has. They lease all their buses. They manage their drivers. Their drivers work for Hingham Public Schools, but the buses are all leased. And in that situation, you get a better turnover of buses, newer buses. You don't have to maintain. You don't have to insure. That's a model that Paul and I have looked at, and we would see that as a preferred way to move. It also allows us next year to get 3 new buses under the lease versus buying 1. That's what we have right now. We could buy a bus with current money that we have allocated in the FY13 capital budget. We either buy a bus and replace a bus, or we can lease 3.
Yeah, we leased buses a long time ago. I don't know if you switched over to buying lease money.
Well, at the time we thought it would save money, and
It does.
That's my question is now.
Yeah,
And then 16 lease buses, is that more expensive or cheaper than 16 owned buses?
one of the things we would have to do, and I would have Paul and his 50% of his business manager job to do, is I would have him do a cost benefit analysis of this versus leasing versus owning. You know, what's the cost benefit analysis? But little I know about busing, my guess is that owning is probably the cheaper way to go. It may not be the best way to go, but it may be the cheapest way to go. So my guess is, why did you move from leasing to owning? My guess is was money. So the next step of cost would be what we're talking about here. You know, you have your own drivers and you lease your vehicles. You're probably most expensive, but least of a worry, is when you just contract the whole thing out. Probably the most expensive to go. Somebody's going to be making money off of you. But it's probably, you know, from a school district perspective, it's the easiest way to go. But it's the most expensive way to go. So right now, we've got probably the least expensive model. This is not going to cost that much more. This whole thing right now, assuming lease, now again, we're going to convince the town to do the bus leasing piece, which is a different philosophy than owning. Eventually, if you get to all leasing, you know, it's that yearly ongoing cost rather than a capital purchase cost. It's a capital lease cost. You have to shift that thing. There are some challenges with instituting any change of this magnitude. You get the change of times might impact the schedules. We talk about family lives, teacher lives. You know, when do you drop off at daycare? You know, when does your husband leave for work? I mean, all of those kinds of things all impact change. As I said, we'd have to impact bargain this. There is a perception that middle and high school students can't go on the same bus, and that's going to create problems for middle school students. Reality is not the case. I've worked in systems where 6 through 12 go on the same bus. And it's not really 6 through 12, it's 11th and 12th graders in general don't ride the bus. There are a few who do, but in general, it's mostly, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, who ride the bus. There are not more problems on those buses than there are on middle school buses. And I would argue there are more problems on a middle school only bus than there are on a combination. Yes. Having worked in both scenarios, I can agree with Sarah. There are less problems on a high school, middle school. And we do one right now, right?
We do
the Hummerock bus.
Hummerock buses.
Combination.
7 through 12.
When you talk about leasing buses, are you also talking about leasing things like special needs vans?
We currently do our own special needs vans. And, we're going to continue with that model for a while, although North River Collaborative is starting to, build a system of special education transportation that, may for the future be something we look at. But right now, we're gonna keep our own vans. But that could change too. My last district, we leased all of our special education vans. We didn't own them. We had 3. Because you drive them so much that it made sense. We do have 4 capital requests in this budget. The first one is at special town meeting, which precedes annual town meeting. We're looking for $245,000 in capital costs for our technology upgrades, security upgrades that are going on right now. We also have at annual town meeting a request for another $150,000, which would finish off the security project and would come in $300,000 under the original budget. That's nice to know. $150,000 for that second phase of technology upgrade. We talked about the 21st century digital classrooms, making sure that our elementary math classrooms can handle the technology requirements of Envision Math. That would come out of that $150,000. And finally, Gates has fire doors and some exterior doors that need replacement. They don't function anymore like they're supposed to function. And that would be $100,000 in the budget for that. These are all warrant articles on the April 9th town meeting. So, we're almost at the end here. We're going to start talking about the problem, the dilemma we face now. We saved this to the end because we wanted to make sure that you saw the budget as we wanted it, as our needs were, and not to try to fit it into an actual number. The town has forecasted for us a 2.5% increase in revenue. That's not bad. Under normal circumstances, that's a good number for us to work with. It's a conservative number. It's based on some very conservative assumptions. The governor has already released his House 1 budget. You may have heard that he's calling for an increase in Chapter 78 of $25 per student. The town forecast has a decrease in Chapter 70. So there's a gap already in what the governor is saying he would like to provide us and what the town is saying he's likely to provide us. So, we believe there's still some room in the money that's going to come from the state to get us some additional funds on the town side. And the problem is, if you go down to in red, the problem is that we are forecasting a $223,000 cut in circuit breaker. And again, circuit breaker is based upon three things. One, qualified students from the previous year, meaning, it's not from FY14, it's going to be from the previous year. Foundation, meaning the amount of money above that those are eligible costs to get reimbursed on. And the reimbursement rate. So when you look at that formula, we're going to have less students who are going to be eligible. We have some students who are basically aged out and are no longer in the formula for us. And big tuition numbers in some cases. And the foundation, we're factoring at $40,000, which is what it is this year.
It's a little bit lower than that.
A little bit lower than that, yeah. And we're factoring the reimbursement rate at 60%, as opposed to it's close to 68% right now. So all those things together cause a $223,000 gap. We are putting $80,000 more from grants. Now the grant number is a little deceptive. That's not our total grant number. We get about $1.3 million in grant money when you look at, the special education grants, IDEA, when you look at, the Title I, Title IIA, you look at MEDCO, early childhood. Our grants are actually about $1.3 million. We only included the grant number that's directly related to personnel, that we pay personnel from, and because those other things are not personnel. So they're not in this budget. Those things are not in this budget. So they're not, that's why the revenue number wasn't included. But anyways, you can see the increase of $80,000. That's because of a lot of the contracted services that Diana was talking about going away. And we're actually moving some of our staffing costs into the grants. So that's where we picked up $80,000 in doing that. So there was another reason why we did some of this redeployment, to pick up some money. And bottom line is the revenue increase, what looked like pretty good at the top, is actually below 2% because of circuit breaker. The expense side, and you again have this in your packet, we're looking for a reduction in capital outlay there. The expense side is actually a reasonable increase in most years, not in recent years, but in years past. Those of you who've been on school committee a while, you look at a 3.85 increase. That's not bad, considering all of your contractual obligations that you have and so forth. 3.85 in a school budget is pretty good, being under 4%. But unfortunately, the numbers don't match. You got $652,000 short right now of what we presented and what the funding looks like. So how do you close the gap? Well, that's what our work over the next 2 months will be. There are three options to closing the gap. Increase revenue, which most of that revenue increase would have to come from the town side. I don't think we're going to increase fees or any of that stuff, so I don't see grants going up dramatically. Circuit breaker may go a little bit, but I doubt it. So, it's really going to have to go back to the town and say, can you do a little more? I think that's one question we're going to have to ask. We are going to have to decrease some of our costs. So that's going to come back to the administrative team with input from the school committee about, okay, What priorities can we fund and what can't we fund? We can't fund everything that's in this budget, so what comes out? So that's going to have to be determined over the next couple of months. And could we prepay some special education costs with money left at the end of this year? Keep in mind, you did that this year. You had about $200,000 in prepaid tuitions in the FY13 budget, which means you lower your special education costs in the budget. So if we have money left at the end of the year, which Paul, you would anticipate we would at this point, we could use some of those funds. Let's say it's $200,000. We could use some of those funds to prepay special education tuitions, lowering that cost in FY14. So that could take down a couple $100,000. So the gap isn't that big, really. In reality, with everything we've got in this budget, with all the new positions we have in this budget, the gap isn't that big.
Now, that discrepancy in the town and Patrick's chapter 7 would also help us.
Yes, it could. That could close. You know, again, I mean, I think a reasonable approach with the town would be, you know, let's look at the governor's numbers, and, you know, he's forecasting more money. If you were to break that down, and again, we get 66.6% of that. Break it down that way, what would that do to that number? It would take it down even further. So the differential hopefully will get much shorter, much closer.
What is that number of 25%?
That hasn't been factored into the,
Yeah, but what do we
town
have
hall
there?
at all yet.
Yeah, we have 30,
Yeah, 3,200.
3,200 students times $25.
So that's what, 80 grand? How'd I do?
Jamie's doing it right now.
What's that? I was totally taking notes on something else. I missed that one.
3,200 times 25. Yeah.
I made it.
Well, what do you need?
Facilities
Trying to
manager's
engage.
last.
All right, 25.
Discuss revenue splits without much success. And it seemed to me that, you know, we were talking about potentially having a town-wide discussion about leasing versus owning buses. Also, it seemed to me to be an opportunity to discuss something that I know we all want, to eliminate bus fees, athletic fees, activity fees, all that about expo fees.
Yep.
Because, I mean, again, we are required by the Constitution of Massachusetts to provide a free and appropriate education. And our Constitution is the oldest democratic constitution on the planet, small d. But it seems to me that we need to restart our efforts to engage the selectmen in that discussion, because over the last few years, that 66-33 split has been sacrosanct. And, I think we need to have that discussion again.
I agree, and I think the fact that this budget, and the reason why we're showing it this way, and not just showing just the operational budget based upon what the town gives you, is we want to show what's in the budget that makes this system work. There's fees, all those fees, that you said over $800,000 worth of fees. There's over $1.3 million worth of grants that come in, and there's tuitions that we collect, both from full-day kindergarten, early childhood, other special education programs in our schools. We are collecting, basically over $2 million outside of the money provided by the town. If that money was not there, we would have it would be devastation to our school system. And that conversation needs to take place to see how much we are funding from other sources. Because you're absolutely right. The cost of educating and the revenue provided for educators, the gap is widening. And more and more are fees. And, we already pay high fees in Scituate, both for athletics and for busing. They're already high. And to your point, is that truly, a free and appropriate public education when you're asking people to pay to get to school, and once you're in school, to participate? And I'm of the belief that an extracurricular program is part of your educational program and is not separate. Now, there are people who disagree with me and say, well, those are choices. They're wrong. No, they just disagree. I mean, they're wrong. They disagree. They have another point of view. However, closing that now is conversation we need to restart. I totally agree with that. I think there's opportunity here to begin having those conversations with the Board of Selectmen. Yeah, and as you can see, the next steps. We got a meeting on the 11th where we're going to have some budget discussion again. Once you have a chance to absorb all of this, we'll have the department chairs here on the 11th to talk a little bit more about this. By law, we have to have a public hearing, which we'll do on the 4th of March. And we have another school committee meeting. We have the school committee meeting which follows the public hearing. We'll do the public hearing a little earlier than the school committee meeting. And then we go out to speak with the Board of Selectmen. So that's our time to begin having those conversations, March 5th, 6th, and 7th, with the Board of Selectmen, Capital Planning, and Advisory Committee on our request. Then you have 2 more school committee meetings in which you could approve the budget prior to April 9th. And hopefully, before, April 9th, we have an agreed upon number with the town on what that's going to be. So that's the process. Originally, the town meeting was scheduled for April 8th. They have moved it to April 9th, which is a Tuesday, which opened up April 8th for us to meet. And keep in mind, when you vote a budget, you can't increase it after that vote. You can always lower it, but you can't increase it. So you go in, you don't want to vote a budget too low. Okay? That's it. So, at this point, we have audience members who have been very patient for the last 2 hours. And, we could open it up for any questions or comments or, continue the dialogue.
Just to the last point, and I think everybody up there knows that I've always been one of the strongest supporters for Scituate Public Schools. But I would have no issue with you approaching the selectmen, possibly asking to tweak the 6633. But I think if we were not going forward with hopefully in the middle school, that would be a very good suggestion. I'm afraid if we start doing that, and then the middle school proposal wouldn't come to fruition for 2 or 3, 4 years, which is certainly going to require an override. By then, if we have reduced the town side budget, say to 30%, I don't think it would ever happen. But if it was 30 and the school was 70, the town is now going to need an override for operational. I think you really have to think this through before you start to militantly, go after the selectmen, because you don't want to kill that proposed project.
Yeah, and I think the point, again, certainly we wouldn't want to militantly go after. I think you want to go after it collaboratively. And what I would say, and again, I'm new here, so. But I see a very positive relationship that exists right now between the selectmen and the school committee. I think we've had some very good conversations about the Gates issue, the need, and they've been very supportive of that, obviously. You make an absolutely great point that if the debt exclusion goes through for new middle school, the question is operationally, you need to be able to sustain your operational budget at the same time. You don't want to see one negatively impact the other. Because I've seen systems before where they built beautiful new buildings and they don't have the money to run them. I think it happens. You've been down that road before. So that's one of the cautions, again, that you have to understand going into this. You know, whatever happens, I mean, something has to happen with Gates. I think everybody agrees with that. Something has to happen. Whether it's a renovation, addition, a new building, something's going to happen. But there'll be a debt exclusion, and that will impact the budget. And then the operational budget, you need to make sure we can continue to sustain the operational budget going forward. You make a great point.
Just having been here for and I always, as I say, I have always supported, the overrides have certainly tried to convince my age group, to see the benefits of it. And I would continue to do so. But I would hate I would hate the school department to kind of kill their opportunity. Hopefully, all of these other monies would bring that difference of the 652,000 to a much lesser point.
Right.
And then maybe there can be a few cuts in the budget that everybody will be happy.
Right, and we can live with those. And you're right, absolutely.
Because that 6633 doesn't have to be.
That's correct.
The town can decide, okay, we want it to be 64, and then we're really in trouble. So,
I mean, you're right, and, but it is a collaborative decision that the school department and the selectmen have to make together, especially considering, what's potentially on the table going forward with schools, fire station, police station, new town hall, all that, those possible things is a huge number. And especially when you consider just part of it going forward as a status quo, and the sticker shock to the taxpayers is huge, especially when you consider that after our last override, we said we need to be self-sufficient 2 more years before from where we are now. So, I don't want to sound like the schools are constantly looking for more money, not too much. Promise we would do it as taxpayers, which would be self-sufficient, until 2015. But, it's a collaborative decision that we need to keep asking the selectmen to have, because the town has needs, obviously.
but even after that discussion, and if both the advisory and the selectmen approve, it's still up to the vote of
It's
the
always up
town
to the
meeting.
voters, but,
So it doesn't end.
I think our goal is to put it to the voters as one voice between the school department and selectmen.
Yeah, and I think the point of self-sufficiency, I mean, we can present a budget that's self-sufficient, right? We can, very easily. And, the good thing about this budget for 14 and 15, I believe, is we're not going to lose staff, people. That was a commitment that we made, and we're not going to lose people. Now, again, we're going to redeploy some people. That can happen, but we're not losing positions. We're looking to put a few in there. Do we get all of those in there? Probably not. Can we get some of them that can help move us forward? Hopefully. And again, my job, as I stated at the very beginning, is not to present a budget here that fits the revenue number. My job is to present the best education program that Scituate can afford. If we can't get there, we can't get there. But we can get as close as we can get. But again, you make a great point of making sure that we can all move forward together with what is going to be a large potential debt that the town will incur when all of these projects come forward.
I mean, your presentation was extraordinary. I mean, I would.
Whole other way of looking at it.
Right. No, so I have absolutely no issue with what you want, with what the district wants to do. I just want to talk about, the practicality.
You're absolutely correct. The practicality of it is the challenge.
So I'd like to jump in and support what you're saying, because as much as we would all like to reduce fees and all of that, right now, as you say, our programs are built on having access to those funds. And having just come through some really bad years, we didn't know how we were gonna get to the budget. We could get to budget without losing people and all of that this year. That in itself is a miracle, in my view. So I think that's something to look at down the road, but I don't think now is the time. There are places that we want to go, and I hope our funding is better and all those kinds of things, and that we'll have the money to reduce. But right now, families who are accessing these services are having to pay a little bit to get access to them. It's unfortunate, but I think it's something we can't tinker with at the moment. We have to tinker with some of these common core issues, adding the math program, adding some of these additional staff members, because that's being imposed on us from the state. We don't have a choice there. Well, whether we should be doing this now or down the road, that's up to them, that's to do. So, and I'm sure you're prioritizing all these changes and mandates move to the top of this.
They always do.
Right. So, from my perspective, what's really nice about the way this was done, and when I read it before we got here for the advanced copy, I thought, wow, this is really great. I can really visualize where our money is going, what students are, what benefits students are seeing from how we're spending our money. It's not just adding on, we've already done it. I think that's great.
It's a very important way to do it. You want to make sure you tie in your goals with your dollars, so you can see where you're going to.
And we're not that far off. I mean, I know it's not perfect, but I think we can see ways that we might be able to get everything that you'd like to have, and change it for the programs that we have.
I thought we were going to be a little better, then Paul gave me the bad circuit breaker.
The circle breaker, yeah, I saw that too. That came out on the MAS.
Yeah, and I said, oh.
They love to tinker with that circle, but it's been lower. What has it been, 40%?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's been lower.
So,
But they brought us up on
Foundation.
no, they gave us about $500,000 when we lowered it to 40. ARA funding.
Oh, ARRA.
What we need to do is lobby them for circuit breaker toward transportation.
That got cut this year. McKinney-Vento also got cut this year. McKinney-Vento transportation.
We don't get a lot.
I was gonna
We
say,
don't,
we have
but-
to do that.
But still, a lot of the, that's the homeless
Right.
law. A lot of the districts out there have significant McKinney-Vento costs, and they're funding those on their own. As we,
Yeah, they're hit harder by
all
that.
special education, transportation cost has been funded by the districts. No matter where we go, if we go to, Western Mass, from here, from Scituate, that's where the placement is, we pay for that. That's, it's not part of the foundation, doesn't go into any of the special education per se costs that we do put out of districts or collaboratives. But
Well, I don't see tinkering with the split either. I mean, at this point, we're getting where we need to get with what we have. And I think that shows good fiscal management.
We're having those
Direction.
discussions.
It is, but I don't want anybody in the town thinking that we're gonna be marching forth on the board of selectmen or requesting
No,
any
absolutely
change in the
not.
split or changing that we get rid of fees and they take on more. At this point in time, I think it's something to figure out how we're gonna approach in the future. I think it's desirable not to have fees, absolutely. Any direction we can move in that's gonna help us there, but the upend, there seems to be a positive direction that we're moving in together, collaboratively with the town on all kinds of issues.
Well, the day you decided to do the
Here,
fees,
discussion.
yeah.
That'd be-
Just so everybody's aware of it.
I think you have to keep in forefront of people's minds that the town is not giving us enough money to
Right.
run the school.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, not that we're angry with them, but we need $2 million from outside sources to run the school.
And that's the reality of it.
People who say, well, have parents and children pay more. Guess what? They do,
Yeah.
already.
Yeah. And that's the reality, and that's why we wanted to present it this way, so that you can see all of the dollars. The public sees all of the dollars, and it's important for them to see all of the dollars. Not just what the town budget, they'll vote a town budget number, and they'll see that number, 31,900,000 and something, right? They'll see that number and think, well, that's what it costs to operate the school. No, it's really closer to 34 million that it costs to operate the school, and there's other ways, we're closing that gap with all sorts of other revenues.
It's between 7.5% to 8% of what we need over and above what the town gives us. And it's significant. And this is the first time we've shown it before, but we've shown it in a different way. We don't even put in here the in-kind things that the PTOs do, the courses does, all the PTOs for all 6 schools, and,
About $3 million.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
You start adding that
Well,
stuff in
$3
there,
million.
you're,
Yeah, but Scituate make that additional,
In-kind donations
Yeah.
between the PTOs, it's gotta be well over $100,000 a year. And then course on top of that is another 50 to 60,000, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's $2 million. So, I mean, 200,000, excuse me. 200,000.
So, well, this raised another question in my mind I've always wondered about, and, I know advertising can be a dirty word to some people, but the idea of figuring out ways that we might deal with corporate money through advertising, meals or things that are inclusive to the education process, but places where we might if that's available. I know other districts do some of that. I don't know what that is being.
it's a big, it's a big decision to make, whether that's the direction school committee wants to go in.
It's untapped.
Yeah, it's untapped, and, it's controversial, can be controversial. It is public education. More and more than.
And every year,
Everything comes on the table every time.
The town has made some great inroads into the green initiative projects that they have with the windmill, even though it's controversial right now, but they're also looking at solar and at the former landfill. And that's a revenue source that we haven't really factored in here yet.
None of the ESCO savings
None of the ESCO savings
are factored in now. The question that I would have is, when do we start realizing those ESCO savings, number one? And I think if Bill was here, he'd make the point of, are they really $250,000, or is it gonna be some other number? So we haven't factored that in, because that right now is not,
Real.
it's not reality, so we can't factor that in there. But, anytime you can save on the operation side, and you can put it into your education side, some of those goals can be achieved by doing that. So, and that's, the town is taking that step. I think in defense of, some of the steps they've taken at the town level, funded a feasibility study for us on gates. It's a lot of money. They're funding some capital projects, technology, security, necessary things that we need to do. So, I think, again, there's only so many dollars to go around, and we have to continue to put everything on the table and look at ways. Same thing I've done with this administrative team. I said, look, you need to put everything on the table. There's nothing that's protected here. There's nothing sacred, no sacred cows. Everything's on the table. Because you have to evaluate what you do now in light of your priorities. And there may be some things that you do now, that you fund now, that you say, you know what, we'd be better off funding those than what we do now. So that's why you have to have that conversation. It's not just the new stuff gets automatically cut. You have to look at your whole program. Which is why we redeployed some things this year, because we said, okay, we can't add everything, so we're going to have to redeploy. And I wanted them to look at a redeployment lens first, before looking at an ad list. And that's what we did. Yep.
I
safe to say is we're having a conversation about all the stakeholders coming together to try to provide the best education for the children of the schools. First, I need to thank you and commend you for an extremely well-articulated and transparent presentation of the budget. I haven't seen one like that in the last couple of years. And then also, I'd like to add that, the association of the board is working with, administration with regards to some of the proposals and trying to craft some of these roles and responsibilities and elected just and moving forward to see if we can, again, provide the best education for the children.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We got a lot of discussion ahead of us. We have basically 2 months to go for town meeting. A lot of work to do, but again, I want to thank all of you. I want to thank my administrative team here, not only for showing up today, but for doing the hard work of the budget, because we're presenting this not as my budget, but as our budget. So the hard work that all of them did, and it was a lot, particularly Diana, because we put a lot on her. But there was a lot to do there. So again, thank you, and have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Yes.